Have you always wanted to make pasta but weren't sure where to start? Today I'm going to show you just how easy handmade pasta can be. Hi everybody, this is Laura with Lonely Pines Farm, and today we're tackling handmade pasta. It's been on my to-do list for years, and I always thought that you needed some specialty machines or a lot of skill to pull it off. But then it dawned on me that the best pasta in the world is made by little Italian grandmas in their kitchens using nothing more than a rolling pin and a few basic ingredients. So from that concept, I want to share with you this super simple 2-ingredient tagliatelle pasta recipe. I know that sounds fancy, and I don't know a lot about pasta, but from what I do understand, it's pretty much the same thing as fettuccine, but just a hair thinner. But honestly, since we're doing it by hand, no one's really gonna know anyway. And that's great because that's a really good classic pasta noodle shape, so super versatile. You only need 2 ingredients for this recipe: all-purpose flour and eggs. You may see other recipes out there that include things like oil, salt, or specialty flours, and while those do work, we're keeping it super simple today. One note that I will make on the flour, so we're using AP flour today, which is not traditionally designed for pasta. There is a different kind of flour out there called 𝙎𝙬𝘼𝙔𝙎 pasta. Again, from what I understand, I believe it's ground more finely than traditional flours, and it may have a different protein content. If you know some stuff about 𝙎𝙬𝘼 flour, please educate me in the comments below. But that kind of flour comes from Italy. It's a bit more of a classic flour used traditionally for pizza, pasta, and you can also use it for bread as well. Because we like to eat good, and I enjoyed the first round of all-purpose pasta so much, I did decide to order a bag. It'll be a little while until it gets here, and once it does and I give it a try, I'll leave a note in the comments below on whether or not I feel like it's worth the investment. All in all, it's not really that expensive, and I just ordered it off Amazon, so we'll give that a go when it gets here. But for super simple, this was still very delicious: all-purpose flour and eggs, specifically 240 grams of flour, which is a little less than 2 cups. I use a scale to measure. Again, this was, I don't know, like $14, ordered it off Amazon. We use it all the time, so do recommend picking one up if you like to bake. 240 grams is a little less than 2 cups of flour, so you can kind of estimate it if you don't have a scale. And then 3 eggs in our recipe as well. This makes about roughly 4 servings of pasta, so it's a good place to start. So pile your flour on the countertop, and then use the bottom side of a bowl to make a well in the flour. And then you'll crack your eggs into this well. So it'll need to be fairly decently sized. You have to shimmy it around there to get a good well going. And then you'll crack all 3 eggs in there. And then the next step is to mix. And I would say this is the one thing that does take a little bit of finesse or practice. You want to kind of slowly mix in your eggs to maintain that flour wall. Otherwise, if you break it too early, then you're just going to have eggs all over your counter. So slowly work incorporating the flour right on the inside of the flour wall, and slowly start working your way out into the rest of the flour until you feel like it's pretty well incorporated. Once it's mixed up well, you can ditch the fork and we're going to start kneading. So flour your hands, and you're going to want to knead this vigorously for 10 minutes until it's smooth and slightly elastic. Once the dough has been kneaded, you'll want to lightly dust the outside evenly with flour, and then lightly wrap it in saran wrap to let the glutens rest for 30 minutes. Also, a quick tip for cleaning your countertops to get off the dough that's been stuck from kneading. This has always worked really well for me. Once your dough has rested, it's time to roll it out. So flour out your countertop lightly and begin rolling out your dough. This is where it's helpful to have a slightly longer rolling pin, because it will become a large dough sheet by the time you're done. But just keep rolling it thin and rotating so it remains in somewhat of a roundish or squarish shape. You're ultimately shooting for 3 millimeters thick. This will be the thickness of your noodle. So if you think about, when you eat fettuccine, about how thick that is, that's roughly what you're shooting for. Potentially a little bit thinner, because it will plump up when it cooks. One little tip for you: draping your dough off the edge of the countertop can help stretch it out more thinly without it sticking to the counter. But do beware, it takes a little finesse to make sure that it doesn't completely slide off the edge. And I'm totally not speaking from personal experience there. So once your dough sheet is prepared and nice and flat, you're going to want to lightly flour both sides, because you're going to start rolling it up here really quick and you don't want it to stick to itself. So make sure both sides are floured, and then envision an imaginary center line running down your dough. What we're going to do here is roll both sides up to meet in that invisible center line, kind of like a palmier cookie if you've ever seen those. So starting with one side, begin rolling your dough. You don't want it to be a super tight roll. It will be loose, but you are going to have to apply a little pressure to make sure that it actually catches and rolls instead of just sliding on itself. So roll that up to meet that center line, and then turn your dough and grab the other side and roll it up to meet in the center. So you'll have that kind of like curl meets curl situation. This next cut will determine the width of your pasta noodle. So you can go as thick or as thin as you like. I generally shoot for kind of a, a fettuccine width. But you're just going to start at the short end and try to make them as uniform as possible. Make cuts all the way down the full length of the roll. And those will be all of your noodles. Once you've made all of your cuts, you can stick your knife under, I don't know, about a third of the dough. And if you pick it up like this, with a little bit of help from your hands to kind of get them going, you should see your beautiful handmade pasta noodles unfurl. How amazing is that? You officially just made pasta. Wasn't that so simple? I don't know what I was freaking out about for so many years. I could have been eating pasta this whole time. Now you've got this big, beautiful pile of fresh pasta. Now what do you do with it, right? Ideally, fresh pasta is enjoyed right away. You would cook it in heavily salted water for anywhere from 30 seconds to about 3 minutes. I would watch it closely. It varies a lot. The cook time varies a lot depending on how thick your slices are and how thin you rolled your dough. So it can vary quite a bit. If you aren't enjoying it fresh, like what's going on today, I'm making some in advance for us for later. There are two different ways you can go about preserving fresh pasta. You can first you can freeze it. To freeze it, you would probably cut these in half because they're a little long, and then put them on a cookie sheet in the freezer for 15 minutes. And once they're kind of partway frozen, then you would take them off the cookie sheet, put them in an airtight bag to finish freezing the rest of the way. And they should be good for about 3 months in the freezer. To cook those, again, the heavily salted water, and it would just take a little bit longer, potentially about 3 to 5 minutes, but again, watch them closely. The second option is to dry them, and I always thought you needed a dehydrator for that, but turns out it's not the case. There's a couple different ways you can go about drying them. You can, again, probably cut them in half and put them on a cookie sheet and let them air dry. Go down that route. I would make sure to pick them up every once in a while and rotate them to make sure that they're getting good airflow and that everything's exposed to air. The second option is to hang them on a pole somewhere, like a clean broomstick or a pole of some sort, so they'd be draping down like they were over my hand just a minute ago, and they would dry that way. And the last option is to swirl them into individually sized nests and then dry them that way, which I'm not very good at. Let's see if I can get a chunk of pasta off here to try and display my terrible technique. But there's some swirling involved, and then you kind of swirl it up into a bit of a, well, let's see if we can do it here. Move some pasta out of the way. So there's some swirling involved, and then you kind of end up ultimately swirling it into a nest. I don't know, sometimes I do it better than others. I'm sure there are people out there that have videos with some great techniques that you can go find. But that's another option, individually portioned nests for drying. For all these methods of drying, it'll take anywhere from 10 hours to 2 days for the pasta to dry fully. If you have a fan, I would highly recommend putting a fan on them to help with the drying process. You'll know that they're done by giving the pasta, at least for this tagliatelle, a twist. If it breaks instead of bending, then it's fully dry. For storing that, you don't need to store it in an airtight container because it is dry. In fact, if you do store it in a plastic bag, you'll want to be extra sure that there is no moisture left in it because it could mold if you seal it up like that. But you can just keep it out, and I've got a cute little pasta tin up there somewhere. You could use something like that to keep it in. And it should be good for 6+ months. And then to enjoy that, again, you would do boiling heavily salted water and probably, I don't know, 4 to 5 minutes, so probably less than frozen, but more than fresh. So just play it by ear, keep a close eye on them. One thing to keep in mind with storage is that is based off of this plain and simple recipe. If you do anything like flavor add-ons, that could potentially affect the shelf life of a dried pasta. So if you did like a spinach or a tomato, which we're really anxious to try, and if you have made flavored pasta or enjoyed flavored pasta, please let us know what flavors you like down in the comments below. We're looking for some inspiration. So there you have it. That's how you make super simple 2-ingredient tagliatelle pasta. You should definitely give this recipe a try. It's a great way to impress your friends and family. They'll have no idea how easy it is to make. In fact, I'm ready to pack on quite a few pounds this summer now that I know how to make homemade pasta. For a printable recipe and instructions, be sure to check out our blog link down below. For more food inspiration and recipes, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and share so that your friends and family can learn how to make pasta as well. And if you give this recipe a try, please let us know how it turns out. We'd love to know down in the comments below. Have a great day, everybody!